Hey everyone, it's Sarah, and I am back to film my April reading journal today. We'll get started with my monthly. So, first of all, you have my kind of monthly overview of what I read and when. This is the messy version, and then the cleaner version is in my April monthly. And as you'll see, I kind of got off to a slower start at the beginning of the month and then picked up definitely near the end. I had some kind of duds that I read at the beginning of the month, or just books that weren't as gripping. And then I read some really good, want to keep reading books near the end of the month. So we'll get into that. This is just some washi from my stash, and then these boxes are from Mojo Jojo Plans, and the started and finished stickers are from Peanut Butter Taco. Just kept it simple. So here is a look at my April. I read 8 books this month, which is a lot less than my 14 books that I read last month, and I'm okay with that. 8 is kind of, I think 8 is a good amount for me. I feel like that's pretty typical. Last month was an outlier. And so I read 8 books. My favorite this month was Wayward, and we'll talk about it more when we get into the individual book reviews. But yeah, I read some good books near the end of the month for sure. Then I have my trackers for how many days out of the month I read in general, and then read a physical book versus an audiobook. I made a list of all of the books that I read this month, and then I have my book bingo for April from the Shelfie Chronicles, which I did pretty good on. I got 3 bingos. I did use the book bingo to plan out my reads this month so that I could get more bingos. Last month, I think I only got 1 bingo because I really wasn't looking at that. And then we have the March book of the month. That was my priority to read that. That was Wayward. I had a goal to read some of my older TBR books. I feel like I see the newer, shinier books, and then I forget to read books that I've had the intention to read for a long time, or 3 years ago I thought sounded interesting, and I just haven't picked up. Sometimes I forget to actually look at my TBR when I'm planning out challenges or reading or things like that. And then I also had a goal to read an audiobook with my husband, but we ended up starting the audiobook together, and then we had our car have issues, and he was visiting family when it happened, so he ended up not being around for near the end of the month to finish it before it had to be returned to the library. So he told me I could finish it, and then I just told him what happened. So most of my goals completed. And then I have some tasks. Tasks. No, I just have some notes for what books, based on the April prompts, what books fit the prompts. So that was everything for my monthly. And then getting into the rest of it, I have my Goodreads tracker from the Shelfie Chronicles that I've filled up the first page. I think I'm up to 37 books for the year, and I'll probably need to buy another sheet like this, because I anticipate that I'm going to run out before the end of the year since we're not even halfway done. In April, like I said, I read 8 books, and so this is just kind of my monthly overview there. And now getting into what books I read this month. So these ones technically should be swapped, but I messed that up and just figured, oh well, we'll just keep it as it is. I finished both of these books before I came in to finish filling it out, or to fill out the tracker, so that's why they got swapped. So my first book of the month, I didn't like. This was one of my older to be read. I think this was my oldest to be read. I think on my checklist, I think this was the only old book that I went in and completed. I did not enjoy it. It's called Mermaid. It's a retelling of The Little Mermaid, but I just thought it was really flat. They tried to make a love triangle out of it, and had like a princess above ground, and then the mermaid princess fall in love with the same human um, prince, and he was just such a dud that I don't know why anyone would have fallen in love with him, let alone two people fighting over him and giving up like their entire life and their life basically to be with him. I don't know. He had no personality. I went to read some of the reviews after I reviewed it, and I found a couple of reviews that mentioned that he was very cardboard. He was a cardboard cutout, and I said, that's exactly right. That's exactly how I would describe it. And yeah, it was just not my favorite. And I am a high ranker in general. You usually don't see me. I think this is the first book I've rated. Well, first book ever I've rated 1 star. But generally, I'm like at least a 3 star. This one I really didn't like. And it wasn't even a long book, but I just didn't want to pick it up. And so, yeah, blah. That was like a hard way to start the month when you don't like your first book. Well, I guess technically second, but still. Ugh. Then I had Mistletoe and Mr. Right, which is the second book in the tourist attraction series. I gave that one 3 stars. This one just came up as available now, and I think maybe it recommended it based on my reading history from my library, but it was okay. It followed Lana is the daughter of a kind of real estate conglomerate that buys a lot of properties, and they're working on developing a big series of condominiums at this ski resort in this small Alaskan town. And she's trying to get the town on board with it. Her cousins on the board think that she shouldn't be developing these properties anyways because they just don't see the benefit in it. And then she starts to fall in love with one of the small shop owners. He runs a bar, and yeah, so it's kind of like it is a romance. That's what category I put it under, but it's romance. It's I don't know, a little bit of adventure because you're in Alaska. They had a weird subplot with was it an elk or a reindeer or some sort of an animal that they were moose that they were trying to catch that was very weird. I don't know. Like I said, I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. I don't know if I'll continue reading the book, and maybe also it was kind of not the right time to read it because it had a lot of Christmas tones to it. Maybe it would have been more enjoyable to read in December, but it was the next book in the series. It was available, so I got it. Then we have Wayward. That was my top book this month. I really enjoyed it. This one follows the stories of 3 witches in the same family, and it goes from like the 1600s to present day, and I really enjoyed this. I thought it was good. My best friend and I do book of the month, and so she picked this one. One of my friends from Go Wild, she also picked this for her book of the month and loved it as well. So yeah, 3 of us, we all thoroughly loved it. I also read it really quickly. I read it in 3 days, which is usually a sign that I can't put a book down. So without spoiling too much, yeah, it's 3 different women witches and their own kind of struggles, trials. One literally has a witch trial. So yeah, it was really good. It was really interesting, and I enjoyed it. And plus, the cover is gorgeous. Then we have the Double Comfort Safari Club. This was the next book in the Number One Ladies Detective Agency. I think this is like number 10 or 11, but my husband and I have slowly been working our way through the series over the last couple of years. A lot of times I'll get them for audiobooks to listen to on the road. This one we started around Easter when we were driving down to see family. And they're not very long audiobooks, but like I said, we just weren't together later in the month to finish it before it was due back at the library, so I finished it on my own. But it's just a really easy, comforting kind of mystery. It takes place in Botswana, and the two lady detectives, you have Mara Matsue and Mama Kutsi, and they both just have really fun little subplots and stories, and yeah, I really enjoy it. And I feel like a lot of mysteries that I read are based on, or located in the UK, and so they all kind of have a similar feeling um, a lot of the times. And so this is just a fun one because it takes place in a totally different setting in a different place. Um, but this one, they're trying to track down, the main mystery is they're trying to track down a wealthy woman died in the US, and she wanted to give some money to an African tour guide for a safari that she went on years ago, and had just the absolute most fantastic time, but she can't remember which agency it was with, and so they try to track down that safari guide so that he can get the inheritance that he was offered. Then we have a not so meet cute. This one was a romance, and I was just scrolling through Kindle Unlimited books to try to find a book that started with A to meet the prompt, one of the prompts I wanted for my bingo. I do pay for Kindle Unlimited, but I feel like sometimes I read more from Kindle Unlimited and sometimes I don't. But generally speaking, I usually like to have a Kindle book going on my phone that I can read during my lunch break, because then I feel like I'm not just scrolling through Facebook, and it's easier to handle than having a full book for my 30-minute lunch break. So this was one of the ones that I chose. I just kind of read it in small chunks, but I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4 stars. But it was a romance. It had some spice to it. It had a lot of spice to it if that's what you're into. And basically, it follows Lottie is down on her luck. She's lost her job when she was expecting a big promotion, and she was going to move out of her parents' house. And they're also really excited for her to move out of their house. And so she just can't bring herself to tell them that that she got fired and that she's not going to be moving out. So she goes to try to find, or she jokes with her sister and says that she's going to go find a rich husband by, running or walking around this rich neighborhood and acting like, she's just out for a jog, and maybe she'll bump into someone. And she actually does. She bumps into Huxley Kane, who is a real estate developer who recently told one of his clients that, or I guess, I don't know if it's a client, it's like a prospective business partner that he really wants to do business with, but the guy's kind of playing hardball, and to try to connect with him, uh, he says that he has a pregnant fiance, just like the prospective business partner does. Of course, then they want to meet that fiance and invite them over for dinner, and so he has to go find a fiance, and that's when they run into each other, and it all goes from there. It was just a more enjoyable, more interesting read than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be kind of, you know, standard, but I thought there were enough little twists and subplots that made it really interesting and fun to read. And there's more books in this same series. This is by Megan Quinn, and so I think I might check them out later when I need something easy to just kind of read on my lunch break. But I would recommend. Then we have Gods of Jade and Shadow. This is the story. You have a Cinderella-like character, Cassiopeia. Her mother, when she was obviously younger, before Cassiopeia was born, she ran off with a poor, I think, like an Indian, Mexican, Native American, well, Mexican Indian, And her rich family kind of disowned her at that point because she was, yeah, running off with kind of like a nobody. And when he dies, Cassiopeia and her mother are forced to go back and live with her kind of mean grandfather. And because her mother was kind of disowned, they are treated as poor relations. They have to take care of the family, do the cooking, cleaning, that kind of a thing. And so while the rest of the family is gone, Cassiopeia is left behind to do some ironing or washing, something like that. And she ends up finding a key to her grandfather's mystery chest. And this chest has been something that they've always had. He always wears the key around his neck, but he forgot to put it or, take it with this time. And so she's curious, mad at her family. And so she decides to open the chest. And inside she finds bones, and the bones magically reassemble into a person. And this person ends up being a Mayan god named Hunkame, who was betrayed by his brother with the help of her grandfather and was locked into this chest so his brother could, kind of take over as the ruler, the number one Mayan ruler. And it definitely has a lot of, Mayan, I believe it's Mayan, uh, what would you call it? Mayan mythology. And so it was a really interesting book. It wasn't like anything I'd read before. I haven't read a bunch of Mayan fantasy novels. So that was really fun. And then Cassiopeia is tasked to help this god go and recover pieces of himself that his brother stole and hid with some of his allies so that he can, be fully reformed and have all of his power back. And because she was the one that opened the chest, she's linked to him, and he's basically draining her life to keep alive until he can reassemble himself totally. So, very interesting novel. I enjoyed it. I listened to it as an audiobook, and it just felt like storytelling. It was really nice. Then we have All Good People Here. Last fall, my sister got me into Crime Junkie, a podcast that Ashley Flowers does. And this was I believe it was her first novel. And this was a like crime thriller where you have a child that was murdered 25 years ago, January Jones, and Margot, who is the same age at the time, who played with January as a child, comes back to her hometown to take care of her ailing uncle, and another girl goes missing in a nearby town. She thinks that they're linked and she's trying to prove it. She's a journalist. And so, yeah, just an interesting novel. I really liked it. I gave it 5 stars. My sister read it and she said it was okay. It wasn't her favorite, so maybe like a 3-star rating for her. But I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I didn't see the twists coming, and I thought it was a pretty not necessarily fast paced, but a good moving novel. So yeah, I liked that a lot. I enjoyed it. But if you're not into obviously child murders or things like that, child abuse, then you probably wouldn't want to read that one. Then we have The Housemaid. This is something that I've heard so many people talk about. So I finally decided to read it because it was on Kindle Unlimited and I needed a new book to start on my Kindle. And this one was great. This is Millie, who is another kind of down on her luck. She's recently been released from prison. She lost her job. She's living out of her car and she needs a job desperately. And somehow she manages to get a job as a maid with this wealthy family. And the wife, Nina, is really mean to her. People say that she's crazy and she's just trying to you know, earn enough money so she can figure something else out. But, um, you know, she's sticking it out because she really has nowhere else to go. And so she, yeah, I don't want to keep going because, yeah, there's more obviously that happens, but it was a thriller. It was fast paced. I kept wanting to know what was going to happen next. I read it in 3 days, which is always a good indicator that I liked it a lot. I gave it 5 stars. Can't wait to read the sequel this month. But no, I really enjoyed that one, and I would recommend it if you like thrillers, for sure. So then going on to the rest of my challenges, I'm slowly filling out all of my challenges for this year, kind of getting to the point where not a lot of the books that I typically read are just going to magically fit into these prompts. So I might have to start looking at some of the prompts and figuring out what to read based off of them. But yeah, slowly filling them all out and getting them all done. I have some sticky notes for books that I intend to read that would fit a prompt, especially ones that are like award winners. And then every month I look up, did this win an award? I'm like, I might as well just look at the award winners and then write down a book that's already, you know, on my holds list or things like that and go from there versus trying to see if any of the books fit it. But yeah, slowly getting all of these done. Most of these are from the Shelfie Chronicles. I also have 2 new ones that I don't think I showed last month that are from Creating & Co. This is her yearly challenge, and then she does a seasonal challenge. So this is the spring challenge that I'm trying to include books that I read in basically March to June timeframe until summer starts. So yeah. Anyways, that was everything I had for this month's reading journal. I hope you enjoyed, and I will just catch you next month. Bye now.